and welcome to CEO Reflects. And today we have Zoltán from Nortemsy, and we are going to be talking about the world of AI and robotics and what it means for us as leaders. And so I'm really excited to get into this. Zoltán, a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Nick. Nice to be here.
Excellent. When we were talking about putting this together as a conversation with you, the world has moved on quickly, and a lot of people are saying that 2027 or 28 is going to be the GPT moment for robotics. As a leader or as a human leader, how do you see our place in that world?
Let's look at the future a bit. So, the way how I see it is that just as with AI in the digital space, we will have robots with physical AI in the physical space. And what I see is that as we understand more and more the capabilities of this technology, we will find more and more tasks that we can assign to these solutions and have them quite good or properly in terms of quality, and of course cheaper and faster than with previous approaches. I think one to understand how to prepare for this new era of robotics is really similar to AI. Like, we need to experiment, we need to understand the limitations of the technology, we need to understand the reliability of these robots. And I think companies working in the physical space, warehouses, manufacturing, and the list is long. I think the important part is that they need to understand what is a robot with AI or with embodied intelligence means, comparing to the old robots, basically robotic arms that were used widely in the industries, for industries. And this is something really new. I think the same robotic arm is totally different when it was programmatic movement, and now it's an AI and it can see and understand what's on the table and do the task.
Interesting. You said that they're likely to become commonplace. What industries do you think are going to be reshaped? Because I look in the office and things like that, and there are no robots yet. I know in Amazon and in warehouses all over the world, there are millions. So what industries will be reshaped in the next, say, 5 years?
I think in the first few years, probably industries will be much more affected where these robots can work without human interference, because the location is ready for that. And then we can have robots working all night, doing different type of work. And the complex part, probably the second half of this 5 years period, comes in where we want to implement these robots in certain places where they interact with people. Just the first thing that came to my mind is safety, of course. And so if we want to translate it to industries, I think all the large corporations who have some kind of automation in the physical world, they are really open and they are looking to step to the next level, where these autonomous systems are autonomous in a way that they can move around the place and do much more complex work than before. Mainly robotic arms were the largest robots or widely used robots in years. And of course, it was more about manufacturing and packaging and doing stuff. And in between, there were a lot of people involved. But nowadays, I think these jobs can be also replaced with robots, which is, of course, bringing fear in the organization. That's normal, I think. But on the other end, these are the tasks that we can assign to robots easily, and these will be the first ones.
So this is something that's going to come quite soon. How should we retrain, or how should leaders retrain to lead through this, what I believe, and it'll be interesting to see if you believe, this kind of GPT moment for robots?
So I think leaders need to understand that this next level of automation is really affecting how you can ensure quality and quantity in your processes. And I think people will go to the next level with the understanding of what a robot can do instead of a human workforce. And then they can really be the ones who operate these robots and look after the processes around robots, which is much more demanding work, I think, in a lot of ways. They need to learn a lot about how to operate these robots. But on the other hand, like every autonomous system needs some kind of guidance, continuous development, and monitoring, like, is everything in place? So there will be a lot of new jobs or tasks with autonomous systems like these robots.
Maybe akin this to the sort of shepherding that we have for our agentics, where we are shepherds of our agentic sheep. The same will be true of the autonomous robot that is doing a task. But as it has agency in the world, there's a chance of physical harm. So I think it's learning how to do that. So what are the kind of leadership challenges that arise when you have not only agentics, but robotics or robots in your workforce?
So probably there will be definitely organizational challenges. Like I think with AI, we see that there are certain situations where in the long term, some positions are just vanishing because of AI, because it's much more effective. It's the same with robotics, I think. And then new positions showing up. And there's always the question as a leader, like, can I transfer my people from position A to position B because of the new circumstances? Or how do I do that? If there is the possibility to transfer and train people to the new position, then I think it's less stress as an organization. But if it's a big change and you cannot really transfer because you need different people or different mentality or different knowledge, then that's something that we need to deal with as leaders. And then I think it's not easy to have this understanding, like what is the gap between position A and B? I need to understand the gap so I can make this decision if I can just help people to get to the new position.
Are there any other blind spots apart from seeing that there's a team dynamic that's going to happen? Are there any other blind spots that you think leaders should be aware of?
So I think leaders need to understand that working with autonomous robots has some dependencies on the existing infrastructure, and they need to be aware of that. So just like when you're working with open source AI models, you need a lot of GPU. So probably your existing server infrastructure is not good enough to have a lot of AI computing power in-house. And I think it's the same with robotics. Robots can work efficiently in a bit different environment, probably, like regular people do. Let me give you an example. So if you want to have a humanoid robot at the hotel desk when people arrive, and then the humanoid robot will welcome them, you don't really need a keyboard for the robot. For the human workforce, you needed a computer there. For the robot, you don't need that. And at that point, there is the question, like, what kind of desk do you need for the robot? Because it's a computer itself. So it will upload all the data. It will scan the passport immediately as it looks at it. When you start to learn that, you will change your existing infrastructure as well to be much more efficient working with a robot. And maybe there are some new possibilities that you didn't have before because you have like a small area, and then you don't need a lot of stuff because of the robot. So now you have free space, and then you can do something with it. But it's a learning curve, I think, the infrastructure aspect of using robots. There will be certain tasks that you assign to robots, and then you have all the security challenges that you have with IT systems. Previously, they didn't have that with the human workforce. But when you install a robot to do the task, then it's a computer, and then it can be hacked, and then you need to be aware of that. And the training of a robot is totally different than the training of human workforce, of course. So the development of the organization is a bit different. Maybe you need more partner to do the post-training of these physical AI models on the robots, so they can do much more and much better.
I wonder if the fact that we train agentics as part, like we do humans, we need to do something similar with robotics or autonomous robots.
Exactly. Training data is the essence of these physical AI capabilities. And the good thing is that we can generate real world data and we can use also synthetic data to do that. And of course, the different strategies have different advantages and pros and cons are always there. But the fact that we can teach robots from videos or by showing them with deliberation a certain task, and then they can learn from that is really powerful because it sounds like a one-shot training for easy tasks. Like I teach them once and then they can do it forever.
Do you think that world models are going to have a part to play in that?
Absolutely. I think we all need to be aware of the gap between the simulation and the real world. And this sim to real gap, how they call it, is something that a lot of companies are working to decrease, but it's still there. World models will help us on the simulation side, where we can teach really complex movement and behavior for robots in a large set of GPUs. And then we get this capability, this robotic skill really fast. There can be a gap which we need to be aware of, but this is something that we can work on later. And I think world models will improve these processes as more and more situations will be available in the simulation, not only physics that we inherited from previous generation of NVIDIA, for example, but also a lot of situational awareness data, like how the world is actually working and there are people all around the place and dogs walking by. All these things can be implemented and then the robot will have an understanding about these factors as well.
I think it'll be interesting. There's this convergence between AI that we're working on with agentics, which is more in the data space, and then there's this physical. What are you most excited about that convergence?
I think when we get to the point where we feel that a robot who's working with us is reliable and has good amount of intelligence, I can have good chats with my robots. It can help me. It's reliable, just like in the movies that we see. This is something. Then it's more like hardware. Then it's like a friend. Then we give some kind of personality to the equipment, to the robot itself. And I think as both AI and robotics are moving towards AGI, or at least there is a trend to have full 360 intelligence, I think this is where we get to in time.
I'm quite excited to see a Paris fashion show for robotics because you get a lot to wear them, right? You don't want your robot to look like anybody else's. So I think if they're in the office or if they're in the workspace, then what fashion would you wear them with? So with that in mind, do you think the future's more human or autonomous?
I think the human factor is really something that will stay with us. I think there will be always a gap. We will really distinct like this is something that is a human thing, and this is something that, like my coffee machine. So it's like an autonomous system. At one point, I just need to push the button and then I get the espresso. And I think it will be really similar with robots. But if I go and I ask the barista to create that Italian espresso for me, that's a different value or meaning or sense as having that. And I think it will be, so the human factor will stay with us. I think what will happen is like we will increase productivity with robots, but they will be like separate thing in our life. We don't mix it. We won't mix it with the human life pleasure.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we watch the Olympics because humans run against other humans. I can drive faster in a car or a motorbike, but we want humans to do other things. And I agree with you. I think there's that split between if your physical job is a task, it's going to go. But if it's more, it's going to stay. Given that, what one piece of advice would you give to CEOs in this massive change by, goodness, probably by 2030? Or when do you think it's likely to be? What one piece of advice would you give them about how to think about or what to do in this pretty exciting world we're creating?
I think if they have the opportunity to like buy a small robot and then play with it, it's really similar. Like you use ChatGPT on your own and started to like have an understanding. And of course, first we asked for jokes and then some recipes. And then as we went down, like we started to ask different questions about our daily challenges in the office. And then everyone was experimenting with it. And I think leaders should experiment as much as they can directly with a robot. It can be a small one as well, because they need to feel like what are the capabilities of these systems. And then they will understand the YouTube videos, fancy videos they see about the humanoid robots. And the more they can interact with any kind of physical AI within a robot, I think they will have a better understanding of how the technology is changing and how fast it's developing. But this first line of contact for them is, I think it's really important. It's the same with AI. If you just see presentations about it, you don't really get the understanding, like the capabilities of the technology.
I like that somebody said to me, it's like teaching someone to swim from a video. You just got to be curious and dive in. I think that's some really good advice. What sort of, for them to experiment, would you say, look, CEO, get a dog, get a human? Hey, what's the first step? Because with ChatGPT, you can run it, but we don't just have robots hanging around. How do we physically get into that?
I think there are a ton of these small robots in a few $100 that, for demo purposes, there is AI in there, there is object detection in there. It has like the basics of physical AI, and you can put it on your table and like ask it to go around the table and stop in front of you and do some small tricks maybe, or follow a line that you draw on the paper. And I think these really small robots are a good first start if you don't want to develop or code or anything like that. You just want to open the box, put it on the table, and then just start talk with it and ask it for certain things. And it can be like a mini car or like a mini dog or whatever shape you like, but there are a ton of these. And I think, for example, for kids, you can get a lot of different small robots so the kids can play with it. I think it's also interesting to have an understanding, like what is the market offering to young people, because they will live with robots. So if you let your child play with it or you buy it yourself, maybe for yourself, I think it also helps to have like a basic understanding about the capabilities.
Oh, I like that. And I'm sure people can reach out to you if they want to know more information. But what I'd like to ask, could we, in the future, this is a fast changing environment, I'd love you to come back and keep us updated.
Absolutely. I would love to do that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Zoltán.
Thank you, Tony, for your time. Have a nice day.